It's the same game, just different biblical writers. So my man here makes a very good point, and it can be looked at in two different ways. You see, the book of Revelations, as well as some of the Gospels, speak of an end time. And in the end times, there's supposed to be wars and rumors of wars. And there'll be mother against daughter, father against son. And all these different things are supposed to happen that are destructive and disheartening. But then when you go back and you look at Isaiah 2, when it speaks about the end time, at the last days, that all the world will be at peace and the nations will come to Jerusalem, come to Israel in order to fix their issues with each other, and that there will not be wars and all these other great travesties of life will not be going on in the last days. You see, I say you can look at it two ways, because in one sense you can look at this and say that, well, that would be a contradiction to what the New Testament says concerning the last days. Whereas others would then look at it and say, well, that is not necessarily what's going on. They're not in contradiction with one another. It's just that the New Testament is fulfilling the Old Testament, but adding more thought process to it. It's only talking about during those time frame of peace before the Antichrist comes. And that's how they will use language to try to change the meaning of what these people were saying. But if you continue to read Isaiah 2, it then talks about how the people will be looking at the Eastern idols and doing superstitions and practicing magic and walking away from this God and so on and so forth. And some may say, well, that is the great falling away, and that the New Testament is just fulfilling the Old Testament. And then that's where the differences start to come, and people start to become confused, and people start their own denominations, and people have their own types of thinking. And which is why this book, this religion, if it is supposed to be the word of God, then how can it be translated into so many different variations, to whether or not Isaiah is against what the New Testament is saying, or Isaiah is just being fulfilled by the New Testament. Now, there is a second way of looking at this. And the second way is based on the writers of each time frame, because in each of the apocalyptic writings, it is always when Israel has been severely conquered. When you look at the writings of Ezekiel, Isaiah, Daniel, what you see is that these things are being written during a time frame where the Israelites are either being conquered or have been conquered by the Babylonians or the Assyrians. And since they've been conquered by these people, that they are trying to find some level of comfort and inspiration to the people. And Isaiah and Daniel, in this instance, Isaiah is trying to look at it and say that, hey, God is going to make you into a great nation and come and rescue you, and you're going to live in peace, and the whole world will be at your beck and call, be groveling at your feet. But just don't give in to the wickedness of these Eastern religions and their idols and their witchcraft and things of that nature, and God will make you a mighty nation. They take it that way. The New Testament is roughly the same thing, except just written by a different apocalyptic writer. Hey, the Romans have conquered us. We were conquered by the Persians, conquered by the Greeks, then immediately conquered by the Romans. Nero is going to come back. Nero is going to persecute the Christians. Nero is going to overtax us. He's going to kill us. He's going to do all these devastating things to us. But Jesus is going to come back and reign for 1,000 years, and everything is going to be great. And then there'll be the battle of Armageddon, so that the devil will be let loose again just for a little while to tempt the people, which I always thought was kind of stupid. But he'd be let loose again to tempt the people, so that you go back to those Eastern ways and those idols and things of that nature. And then his reign will be forever in heaven. It took a earthly reign that Isaiah was talking about it and made it into a ethereal reign in some spiritual kingdom type of heaven. But it was based on the Roman government at that time frame, and their persecution of Christians is what the book of Revelations was referring to, as well as your Gospels, which is one of the reasons why we know that these books, possibly the book of John and so on and so forth, were written in the early 2nd century, late 1st century time frame, when people like Domitian was persecuting Christians, when Titus was persecuting the Jews, so, and especially those Jews who had converted over to Christianity. So we know it was written during that time frame. and that they were talking about the Romans. And the 666 is Nero's name in Greek, and if you read it in the Latin Bible, then it's 616, which is his name in Latin. So in no way, shape, or form is it talking about this devil character. It is talking about Nero. And Isaiah is talking about Babylonians and coming out of the Babylonian captivity, is not necessarily talking about the end times. But either way you look at it, it is still just a group of people who are in the worst possible situation that they can find themselves, being conquered, being ruled over and mistreated by another group. And anytime a group is being ruled over in such a way, they look for some type of hope, some type of outlet. And this is the easiest way to create a cult. This is why the Christian cult was able to grow, because you had people who were being persecuted by the Roman government, and through their persecution, other people who felt like they were suffering were gravitating towards this message of hope. You can always trick people into a message of hope when they are downtrodden. If you look at any cult, almost every cult was started by a group of people who felt like they were being persecuted by someone else, being persecuted by a much bigger power. Even when you look at Protestantism, the Church of England, James felt like he was being persecuted by the Roman Church. And so he left it. And then couple hundred years later, or about 100 years later, you have other people who are feeling like they're being persecuted by the Puritans or the Pilgrims or the other Anglicans. And then they started their own versions of Christianity as well. John Smith started his own version of Christianity, the Mormons, because he was trying to escape the persecution that he felt concerning his crime of messing with minors and marrying multiple women. The Pilgrims and the Puritans, they left England because they felt they were being persecuted by the Anglican Church. So people have always done this when they felt persecuted by a greater power. And that's why they start their cults, and they're just looking for some level of hope instead of looking inside themselves. Instead of deciding that they're going to change the government or change the people who are in charge or revolt against that power, they decide that they were going to look for some type of spiritual hope, but still remain within the system to which is condemning them and persecuting them. We see that personally with our ancestors. If you are an African American, or you are African, or you are indigenous American, whatever, that oftentimes the message of Christianity was forced on you, but then it was twisted so that even their version of Christianity was twisted so that you can find some level of hope for your own group of people. I can't tell you how many times as a black man in a black church I was told that the first will be last and the last will be first. And this was always an indication that the white persecutors of black people will be last in the kingdom of heaven, and the black people who have been persecuted will be first in the kingdom of heaven. This is a message that many people in the black church have heard, and you know that you have heard it. If you were in a white church and it was a poor church, then you probably have heard that similar message, but it was always in reference to the big business people and the rich people. Those are the ones who will be last, while you middle class and poor white people will be first. This is a continuous thought process, and you can find this in almost every religion, because they prey on, and not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y, they prey on your feelings of being punished, your feelings of being oppressed, and they count on that in order to get you to follow their lead. And all the while, those who are running that particular organization, that particular brand of Christianity, are enriching themselves, not just monetarily, but with all the other extravagancies of life, while you are sitting now still in a kneeling position, begging and pleading and praying and hoping and wishing, when you need to get up off your knees and fight for your rights, fight for your freedom, fight for you to have the life that you desire to have, because no one can bring it to you except for you. You are the only one that can bring that life to you. No one else can. So always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.